Okay, Brother Mark. I'm just waiting on a notification. Okay, boom. And we are live. I want to thank everyone for turning into a special edition of Off the Record on the People's Podcast this afternoon. We have an incredible guest with us today, one who's going to give us some amazing information as well as inspiration, and that is none other than Brother Marc Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Walaikum salam.
Yes, sir. And on behalf of myself, my family, and the view and podcast, we want to thank you for putting in, first of all, for putting in so much work on behalf of the nation. So we want to thank Allah for you and your family. And we want to thank everyone who's out there. Please continue to like, share, and subscribe to the People's Podcast. All right. The first question that we have for you, Brother Marc, is we want to get right into it because this is part 2 of our interview. But I saw on Facebook recently where you were speaking about the reality of what many call UFOs, but we know are called the wheel and our baby planes. What made you take on such a heavy subject?
Well, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I bear witness there is no God but Allah who came in the person of Master Prophet Muhammad. And I bear witness that the most honorable Elijah Muhammad is indeed his true servant, divine apostle, the exalted Christ that has been risen to the Mahdi. And I bear witness that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is the Messiah in our midst. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam, sir.
Yes, sir. Now, on that question, I felt, sometimes you have to challenge yourself, right? And I felt that I would like to look into the information and bear witness to the mother wheel as it is alluded to in Ezekiel. And that was part of my talk, was to bear witness from the scriptures and from what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is teaching us and what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has taught us and continues to teach us through the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And that the reason why I took on that subject is because there's so much talk of the wheel, and particularly because as we witnessed when the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan did the July 4th speech, and at the end of the speech, he said that the wheels would appear. And then right after he finished, there were many people who viewed it, not just members of the Nation of Islam, but people in different states were viewing the wheels and the baby planes in the sky. So it just goes to show you that there's more than just those of us who believe in the teaching of Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And for the detractors to say, oh, it's a hoax, the government now bearing witness that the wheels are there, they can't hide it. So with what has been put in the final call, with what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan continues to share with us, and that he's backed by the wheels, I thought I would take on that subject to prove how the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is backed by the messenger who's on the wheel, and that he can call them into existence at will. So wherever the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan goes, he's protected, just as when we left Savior's Day this past February, the wheels were in sight. So, yes, sir.
All praises due to Allah. Yes, sir. Brother Marc, we look forward to this. This is a powerful interview. Thank you, everyone who continues to like, share, and subscribe. Brother Nelson Ramos, who's always showing love, says assalamu alaikum, alaikum salam to his family from Massachusetts. My sister Miriam says assalamu alaikum, and we can't wait to put this on YouTube. Okay, yes, sir. So, Brother Marc, as you stated, it is trending consistently on a weekly basis about the reality UFOs or unidentified flying objects. What would you say to someone who wants to know more about who and what is on these planes?
I would say that the best source for this information is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And I brought up several articles, some from the Final Call newspaper, some from I think there was an article in the Los Angeles Times that was dated back some years ago, and that they bear witness to the reality of the baby planes. And so the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is probably the best source. And then, the messenger's writings, they get Message to the Black Man. He talks about it in the Message to the Black Man. Or you could backtrack any edition of the Final Call newspaper and get the same information of the UFOs. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Now, you spoke and told me that you had a chance to actually see them.
Yes, sir. As I was coming home from work, and this was before I did the subject, probably a few days before, and I think I felt like Allah was giving me a sign, and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, he assures us that we are all special to Allah. So there's nothing spooky to say that Allah can speak to us as long as you understand that he's talking to you and that it's factual. So I was driving into my driveway, and as I looked out the windshield, I saw a flash go over my car. And as I said earlier, I let that one go by to make sure it wasn't the street light. And then I looked again and I saw what appeared in the sky again, and it just traveled kind of north from my car. So I knew that was because the stars were out, but they were stationary. And this that I saw was moving, and it was moving faster than a plane. And this was not too long ago, like last month. Yes, sir.
Oh, praise due to Allah. Yes, sir. Now, yes, Brother Marc, now when you saw this, were you afraid?
No, sir, because knowing the reality of the mother wheel, what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Mr. Farrakhan is teaching us about the mother wheel and the baby planes, and I've been believing in the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's teaching since 1977. So it's well embedded in my mind. And that wasn't the first occurrence that I saw. I had saw them before. And then, like I was bearing witness to those who bore witness again, it was all on YouTube that they are there. So, Allah, he takes the fear out of you, when you know that he's in control of all of that. And when I saw it, it's just like I knew that Allah was letting me know that they're up there, and that, just be confident in the subject that I was about to present, and that you would bring us some good information. And then not too long after that, I believe someone, I think from Chicago was teaching on the wheel, so and a lot of my information matched what was being presented. Maybe not as well, but, it just assured me that I was on the right track.
Oh, praise due to Allah. Yes, sir. And there's nothing like firsthand sources, primary sources of seeing the wheels and seeing the baby planes. Now, you said we're going to come back to some of your earlier sightings as well, but I want to come to this. 1985, the Most Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan gives an announcement where he believes the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad is alive and, in fact, on the wheel. You were, of course, during that time period, you were there. And what did that feel like? And were you nervous about telling your family and friends in 1985 that this is what you were believing and what you stand
on? I wasn't nervous, because it's just like when you had the interview and we talked about the dope busters and going into Mayfair Mansions and knowing that we were confronting people with guns, and we actually took guns from people. Allah, like I said, Allah removes the fear from you. So when I witnessed the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan speaking of his experience, then with my total confidence in who the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is, there was no fear or embarrassment to share that with my family because they know of my belief, and whether they believed it or not, what I was able to express, I was confident in that because that's what I believe. So, and I know that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, he knows what he's talking about and he can back it up with facts. And like I said, anytime he wants to call them into existence, they're there. If he called them, I'm sure when he called them that night, if we went outside, they were there in the sky. Yes, sir.
Oh, praises due to Allah. Yes, sir. Okay. Now, Brother Mark, my next question is, what was your first time where you remember seeing baby planes?
I believe we were traveling on the highway. And I remember, I think it was in the early 90s. I believe I was still in DC. But we used to actually, we used to see them in the sky in the early days also of the study group. And we would just look up and we could tell that the way they were moving wasn't like the stars or the planes, because we always had to check to see if the light from the plane is moving at a certain trajectory. And once we were able to distinguish that light and that movement from the plane, we were able to know that those were baby planes that were in the sky, So, and they move at a terrific speed. So there was times when, in the early days of us coming into the Nation of Islam in the 80s, and then in the 90s, even when I was in Washington, D.C., and we were on the road, we were traveling probably to one of the lectures of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And, like the experience I had when I saw it right outside my house, it flew over the car like real fast and went down the road. And we all looked up and said, "Oh, did you see that?" So, yes, sir.
All praises due to Allah. My sister Naima sends the greetings, and thank you all, people who are showing you love all across the country, Brother Mark. My next question is, do you feel somewhat vindicated that people that you were taking the same, as you said, since 1977, and then now in 2023, the government is admitting that the reality of the mother plane, baby planes, do you feel some sort of vindication?
Oh, yes, sir. I feel that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and what he presents, he didn't necessarily need the vindication from them because he got his vindication from Allah and from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So I'm with him on what he, who supports him. So whether the government, can back it up or vindicate it is not really important, because I know that the power of the will and what it's here for, because I know and believe in the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. But because the government now is revealing what they have kept secret for all these years, because they can no longer hide the fact that they're in the sky and that they have been making appearances, and that not only are they seeing them more, or their pilots are seeing them more, or their astronauts are seeing them more, people all over the world are seeing them, but now they have autopilots that are flying jets. That I think just recently there was a jet pilot that bore witness to the fact that he saw one in the sky. And I was just reading another report where the gentleman was talking about he saw a big aircraft, and the interesting thing he said it looked like a football field, the size of a football field. And from the teaching of Honorable Elijah Muhammad, he always described the mother plane as like 2 football fields. Am I correct?
Correct.
So when that gentleman said that, I'm saying either he's reading the teaching of Honorable Elijah Muhammad, or Allah is just making him bear witness to what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the Minister Farrakhan, has said on the measurement of how big this particular craft is. So, with that type of witness bearing, it does vindicate what I already know. So, it just goes to show you that they're there, and we can know that if somebody needs the white man's approval, then just put on YouTube and it's there.
Beautiful. All praises to Allah. My brother-in-law, Brother Keem, sends a greeting to his brother Daryl's son, who's another dope buster with you. And we got a question about the dope busters as well coming up. I also wanted to ask you, sir, for people who are the new generation, who were not there in 1985 for the announcement, or who may not be familiar with the Million Man March, and some of the times of the ministers just declared it and they saw it or something, and they want to know who is flying these objects, who is there. How do you explain that to these people?
Well, I just say, like the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has always taught us that, and the brother that had brought me and my brother into the nation, brother student Mr. Rodney, he used to tell us that the beings that are on these planes are at the age of 6 years old, their reflexes start to slow down. So, and I bear witness to that because there are now young prodigies of young boys and girls, Black boys and girls, that go to school as such and graduate from colleges at 8 and 10, 12 years old. So it bears witness to the intelligence of our people, in that this bears witness that there is very possible and likely in the fact that these young beings are the ones that are flying these baby planes, because their reflexes are really, in tune. And so I would tell them that this is what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is teaching us, and that any information that you need on the wheel, you can research it. And the fact that, the scripture says we war not against flesh and blood, but against spiritual powers and wickedness in high places. So our people used to operate on a higher frequency than we operate now. That's why they were able to build the pyramids. That's why they were able to build the Sphinx and the kingdoms that they built. But then, because so much was taken from us, we're not on that frequency now. But we have to just believe that the intelligence and the frequency that our people are on, and that we can be on if we clean ourselves up, that bears witness to why the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan was able to tune in and Allah was able to bless him with the vision of being taken up on the wheel in a vision. So the scriptures bear witness that, Ezekiel had a vision, prophets and messengers have visions. So it's not unlikely some of us have visions ourselves, of things that are going to come in the future, and we see it and then it happens. It's one of those deja vu moments. So, and that may be on a smaller scale, but just as that happens to us, the Honorable Mr. Louis Farrakhan had that vision that he was taken up on the wheel, and that he talked to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and the Honorable Elijah Muhammad gave him those instructions of what the enemy was planning, and he was planning the war, against the Muslim world, and then against us here in America. So, yes, sir.
Excellent teaching, Brother Marc. All praise to Allah. People are showing you love all across the country. Thank everyone who continues to like, share, and subscribe to the People's Podcast. Shout out to my brother Roosevelt, who's sending you nothing but love from New Orleans. We have a quick 60-second commercial break, Brother Marc, for all of the sponsors of the People's Podcast. 1 second. Here we go. And I want to thank Brother Marc. Yeah, we'll come back to that. Okay, Brother Marc, I wanted to ask you about the cover of the Final Call newspaper, where you were on the cover, with the fight against the police. Do you
Oh,
do you still have that cover?
I just saw, I think I have a picture of it in my pictures, either on my Facebook pictures or in my phone. I was just looking at it probably last week because I think I was talking to someone about that because I was sharing with them that the history and who it was. Yeah, and I was talking about at the mosque a couple of weeks ago. I was doing another lecture on, I think, the price of redemption.
Mm.
And I use that as an example of what it takes and what we have to be prepared for, what, it costs in order to, make our people free from this enemy. And the example of us going and, having to defend ourselves against the attack of the police in Washington, D.C., and the results of how I got the, bump on the head and the blood, and other brothers got the same, but just as we got bumps, they got bumps too.
Oh, crazy. Me too alive. Yes, sir. Go ahead, Brother Mark. All right. Now, Brother Mark, now I want to go into detail. Hold on. One second. About open this. There we go. All right, Brother Mark, I want to go into detail about what took place and how you all made the cover of the final call. But hold on 1 second for our sponsorships. There we go. 1 second.
Children's book and coloring book, and now in a drone, camera and a drone. He does television and film editing. Please reach out to him if you need any of those services. Sister Miriam's ABC I Love Me, children's book and coloring book, and now Spanish book. All three available on Amazon.com. Sister Naima's Stay on Point Dance Academy, LLC. She teaches ballet virtually to young girls all across the country, right here in the studios of Atlanta, Georgia. Brother Kenneth's Bow Tie Maker Extraordinaire. He'll ship you bow ties anywhere across the nation. Dr. Henry Carter's King Henry Turkey Legs, right here in Atlanta, Georgia. Brother Rashad Muhammad's COVID-19 Disinfected Cleaning Services, out of Chicago. Student Minister Sharif Muhammad's book, A Soldier in the Movement of Christ, available on adulsharif.com. And lastly, Brother Joshua Muhammad's book, Cleopatra, as well as No Father, No Excuse, both available on Amazon.
Perfect. All right. So you're right back to our brother, Brother Mark. Okay, so can you, my mother, of course, and father had that final call in our house. It was something that we had to look at consistently to be reminded of the history and the price that, you and many of our uncles and fathers paid a price, and aunts to help establish Islam in America. What took place that day, and how did you all, what took place?
Well, as Brother Joshua, we go out with the Final Call newspaper. That's the #1 minister in the nation. And that day, that night, we were in Thomas Circle. And few of the brothers were down at the intersection. Myself and Brother David, who was the former captain of the mosque in DC when I first got down there in '87. And then he later became the student minister for Durham, North Carolina, because we were being sent to Durham and Raleigh and Rocky Mount, South Carolina, and all those places to set up study groups, Arlington, Virginia, Alexandria, Virginia. But that night we were standing, myself and Brother David was standing in front of the People's Drugstore. And he was on one side of the door, I was on the other. So out of the corner of my eye, peripheral vision, I saw the brothers look like they were in a skirmish and with the police. So I said, "Oh, Brother David, look, the brothers are fighting down there." And so we just, we didn't even hesitate. We just ran down to the intersection and, jumped into melee. And, Brother Tim was, dealing. Brother Tim was, I'm not sure if he was the captain at the time or the first officer, but Brother Tim was there. He was in the mix, and, he was taking care of some business, and, other brothers were doing their thing. So we jumped in, and then I was like, Brother Tim, you all right? And he's like, yes, sir, and so what happened was originally how this started. I think one of the brothers, Napoleon, was like off the sidewalk. So the police officer wanted him to get up on the sidewalk, and then he backed the brother up, and he was using a little force, and the brothers came to defend him. And then when that happened, it just kind of got, police kind of put it out of control. So when we saw it, we went down and jumped in. We didn't know how it started at the time, or we weren't asking no questions. We just ran and jumped in to help our brothers, and so then as we were in it, one of the police officers, he kind of grabbed me, and, we weren't trying to, really hurt nobody, but we were trying to make sure, they didn't hurt us. And so he got my hands and put one hand behind my back as he put me up against the car. And then I looked back, and I was checking on some other brothers. And as I looked back, that's when he cracked me over the head with the billy club, and then I think I didn't see how Brother David got hit. Brother Naba, Brother Richard, he got hit also. He was in the mix too. From the editor of the Final Call newspaper, he was in the melee too. And so when everything was said and done, and they took us down to the police station, I remember they sent me to the infirmary in the police station or hospital, and they put like a few staples in my head for that cut. But when I came out of the jail in the morning, all the brothers came to retrieve me. And that was like one of the best things that happened in my life, was to see all these FOI coming to get me out of jail, So all the brothers came, and, we got hugged up, and, then they did the press conference in front of the mosque. And Brother Dr. Alim spoke about the incident in front of the study group about what happened. And that's when they took the pictures of myself, Brother David, and Brother Naba. And I think Brother Naba actually wrote a book about the whole incident also. So he has a book that's out about that whole thing, Yes, sir.
Beautiful. All praises to Allah. Well, we thank Allah for your sacrifice and the sacrifice of your family, sir.
Yes.
I'm glad that you are still here, standing strong and representing the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Okay. Yes. My next question, Brother Marc, is what was it like in the early days of you seeing the Most Honorable Minister Farrakhan come to Boston, like you said, with no security, and he would just like, what was that like knowing him in that time period?
That's a very good question, brother. Because as you asked, I can picture several different incidents where I saw the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, sat down with him. It was such an enjoyable moment when we were in his presence. And I remember when we first, I believe, met him, and Brother Walter, Sister Doris, or Sister Karima, as she was renamed, and Brother Kareem, who has passed on now, may Allah be pleased with him. In their home, we had the first study group. There were 2 study groups in Boston when the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan started to rebuild the nation. Mm-hmm. And one was in Brother Walter, Sister Karima's house, and with their children. So we would have the study group up in their house. So excuse me, when they first started, it was on a street called Moreland Street. And at that house on Moreland Street, we were sitting at the table, and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan came in, and he was holding these old pair of jeans. And he said, this is what he's been traveling in. And he drove, I think, across the country from Chicago in his car. And it wasn't a big fancy car. He didn't, it was I think it was maybe a small Ford, or, but it was, wasn't a big elegant car. So we were at the table, and he was going around taking names, So he asked me what my name was, and my brother's name is John, and my name, being Marc. He said, "Oh, he said your mother must have been thinking about scripture when she named you." Excuse me. And I always remember that, because that's one of those aha moments, like really special, meeting the man of God, and he's such a humble personality, demeanor, soft spoken when he's talking to you in that particular venue. Very welcoming. So it was a very heartfelt conversation and interaction at that moment. And then there were other times when the family moved to another location not too far from there. They actually moved into a house that was around the corner from where they had the house I think Malcolm X lived in. They have a monument outside the house on Dale Street, and Brother Walter and Sister Doris lived on Walnut Ave. But right on the corner was the house that Malcolm X had lived in. So in this house, the minister one night came walking down the street, and it was him and Sister Khadija. They just came walking. They didn't have no security. It was just them two walking, ministers from Roxbury. So I'm sure he knew where he was going, and walked right up. And before he got to the house, I think one of the brothers was posted outside. He said, "Oh, the minister's coming." So we went out and secured him to the door and went up. And, he talked to us, talked to the study group, those that were there in the evening, and, was dropping a lot of wisdom, and it was a very beautiful night. And then there was a time when he had met with Minister Don, because before Minister Don was called to take over the leadership at the time, with Sister Doris, she was the study group coordinator. And then Minister Farrakhan introduced us to Minister Don. So there was a time Minister Farrakhan and Minister Don were walking up the street, not far from where the mosque that we have now is in Grove Hall, Roxbury. So they were walking up the street, and Brother Roddy and myself were in the restaurant across the street. And Brother Roddy said, "Marc, there goes Minister Farrakhan," like that. So they were just, him and Minister Don were just walking up the street and, talking. And this was before we had established, because there's a mall right in Grove Hall called Mecca Mall that Sister Virginia, who was the secretary, and Minister Don and the believers of the mosque helped establish that Mecca Mall. But that mall wasn't there yet. But Minister Don and Mr. Farrakhan were walking up, and I'm sure they were talking about what they plan to do with Grove Hall that now is the result of that planning, That's just my humble observation. Yes, sir. So, and then there were a few times, as you know, Brother Joshua, when we do security, and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan always wants someone familiar around his door, particularly on the floor that he's residing in the hotel. So a lot of times particularly in Boston, they would ask me to be on that floor, whether it was right at the door or right in that hallway, so that when he walks out, he knows. So not just once, but a few times, he would come out and he would say, and he would call me into the room, and he would say, this brother been with me for 15 years. This brother been with me for 17 years. And there was one time he came out the room, looked over and saw me standing in the hallway, and, you know, kind of walked up, and I walked up to him and he gave me a big hug, you know, and was asking about me. And I was like, wow, you know, and then greeted the other brothers, you know. So those are really, really special moments. And even if he didn't do that, if he just kind of walked by, he might put his hand on my shoulder or on my arm just to let me know he sees me, he recognizes me, you know, he never forgets a face, you know, and that just juiced me up for, you know, I'm still juiced on those moments, you know. It's, you know, like God touching you, you know. So those are several times when, you know, I had the blessing to be in his presence. Yes, sir.
Oh, praise God. Excellent,
yes,
excellent, Mark. Yes, sir. People showing you love all across the country. Thank you all for continue to watch and show love to Brother Mark, as well as like, share, subscribe to the People's Podcast. Brother Mark, my next question is, because this is part 2, so if you all haven't seen part 1 of Brother Mark, make sure we get go back and see part 1. Brother Mark, I want to come back to the wheel and the baby planes in Boston. When you go among you questions about the baby plane and or the wheels, do you tell them what they look like when you saw them, or how do you explain it to
them? I explained it to them as, because I've never personally saw them up close. It was always pretty much like the flash, and then like the red and blue lights that you usually see if you see them out in the distance. So I never really, and I'm not gonna fake it, saw them really up close, maybe except for what I see on the screen, or somebody took a picture and they were seeing it up close in Mexico or somewhere. But, you know, I just say that, you know, I saw them, and, you know, I saw the red and blue lights, and, you know, distinguish it from, like I said before, the plane or stars, you know what I mean? So, yes, sir.
Perfect. Yes. And lastly, Brother Mark, what would you like your legacy to be, sir?
I would like my legacy to be that, you know, as we strive for self-improvement, as Honorable Mr. Farrakhan is teaching us, which is the basis for community development, that I'm able to help perfect myself to the best of my ability, and to be a better person when I leave here than I was when I came here. And that my legacy is that, you know, I did what I believe was right, and stood up for myself, my family, my people. And, you know, I worked hard to make my word my bond in the Nation of Islam. Yes, sir.
All praises be to Allah. Well, this is Joshua Leonard Muhammad signing off of the People's Podcast. Assalamu alaikum, Brother Mark.
Walaikum Islam. Thank you, Brother Joshua. Yes,
thank you, and thank you all for watching.
Yes, sir. Praise to Allah.